My sister betrayed me, had an affair with my husband in our home after I helped her. Now they face the consequences. Hello Reddit. I am a leaner, I am 30 years old and my now ex-husband John is 32. We were together for nearly 10 years, married for 7 of those. My younger sister Evelyn is 28. Until recently, I thought I had a pretty good life. John and I met in college, dated through our early 20s, and got married shortly after establishing our careers. We bought a lovely 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb, had stable jobs. He was in finance. I work in marketing. And while things weren't always perfect like any marriage, I genuinely believed we were happy and building a future together. We didn't have kids yet, but it was something we often talked about planning in the next couple of years. Life felt settled, comfortable, maybe even a little predictable, but in a good way. I liked the stability. My relationship with my sister, Evelyn, has always been a bit complicated. Being the older sister, I often felt responsible for her, especially after our parents moved overseas for retirement a few years ago. Evelyn always seemed to drift a bit. She'd jump between jobs, relationships never lasted long, and she had a knack for finding herself in tricky situations, often needing a bailout, financially or emotionally. I loved her, of course, she's my sister, but there was always this underlying dynamic where I was the stable one, and she was the one needing help. I sometimes resented it, but mostly I just wanted her to be okay. About 8 months ago, Evelyn's life really hit the skids. She lost her job due to, let's just say, attendance issues, and almost simultaneously, her boyfriend kicked her out after finding out she'd run up quite a bit of debt on a credit card he'd co-signed for. Classic Evelyn, unfortunately. She called me in tears, completely panicked, saying she had nowhere to go and no money. She sounded truly desperate, more so than usual. My heart went out to her. Despite our sometimes strained dynamic, the thought of my little sister being homeless was unbearable. I talked to John about it. Initially, he was hesitant. He liked Evelyn well enough in small doses, but he was wary of her tendency towards drama and her lack of responsibility. He reminded me of the last time she'd stayed with us for a week after a breakup and how chaotic it had been. She treated our home like a hotel, left messes everywhere, and generally disrupted our routine. I acknowledged his concerns, they were valid, but I argued this time was different. She was truly in a bind, with absolutely no safety net. I proposed we let her stay in our spare guest room for a month, maybe 2 at the absolute maximum, just until she could get back on her feet, find a job, and save enough for a deposit on her own place. I promised I would lay down strict ground rules about contributing to chores, respecting our space, and actively job hunting. John, being the generally kind person I thought he was, eventually agreed, mostly because he knew how much it would worry me if she were out on the street. He said fine, a leaner, but set clear boundaries, 2 months max. I agreed wholeheartedly. So Evelyn moved in. The first few weeks were actually okay. She seemed genuinely grateful, kept her room tidy, helped out with cooking and cleaning sometimes, and even landed a part-time waitressing job fairly quickly. She was quiet, kept mostly to herself in the evenings, and seemed focused on getting her life back on track. John and I breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe she was finally growing up. John even commented one evening that she seemed much more mature this time around. I felt a sense of pride, both in her for trying and in myself for helping her. But then things started to shift. It was subtle at first. The 2-month mark came and went. Evelyn hadn't found a full-time job yet, just the part-time waitressing gig, and she made excuses about not having saved enough for a deposit. She started getting more comfortable, maybe too comfortable. Her things began migrating from her room into the common areas. She'd leave her makeup spread across the bathroom counter, her shoes kicked off in the middle of the living room floor, her dirty dishes left in the sink to soak. Small things, annoying things, but things I initially wrote off as minor adjustments to living together. I reminded her gently about the house rules, and she'd apologize profusely, clean up for a day or 2, and then slide back into her old habits. Around the same time, I noticed a change in her interactions with John. Before, she'd been polite but somewhat distant. Now she was much friendlier, almost overly familiar. She started joining us for movie nights, sitting perhaps a little too close to John on the sofa. She'd laugh loudly at all his jokes, even the ones that weren't funny. She started asking him for help with things she could easily do herself, changing a light bulb, carrying groceries, asking his opinion on job applications she never seemed to actually submit. John, bless his heart, or so I thought, seemed flattered by the attention. He'd always enjoyed being helpful, being the capable guy. I mentioned to him once that Evelyn seemed quite reliant on him, and he just shrugged it off, saying he was just trying to be supportive, make her feel welcome. He told me I was probably just stressed and reading too much into it. Maybe he was right. I was working long hours on a demanding project at work, and perhaps I was projecting my stress onto the situation at home. But the uneasy feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. I started noticing other little things. John started guarding his phone more than usual, angling the screen away when I came near. He began working late more often, sometimes coming home smelling faintly of perfume, not my perfume. When I asked about it, he'd say he stopped for a drink with colleagues or that the smell must have transferred from someone at the office. Plausible excuses, but they felt thin. Evelyn also started acting strangely secretive. She'd take phone calls outside or whisper into her phone in her room. Once, I walked into the kitchen late at night to get a glass of water, and John and Evelyn were sitting at the table in the dark, talking quietly. They both jumped when I turned the light on, looking startled and guilty. They mumbled something about discussing a movie they'd watched earlier, but the atmosphere felt charged, awkward. I tried talking to John again. I expressed my growing discomfort, the weird vibe I was getting between him and Evelyn. I told him I felt like something wasn't right. This time, he got defensive. He accused me of being paranoid and jealous. He asked why I couldn't just be happy that he and my sister were getting along. He said I was creating drama where there was none, maybe because I resented Evelyn needing our help. His reaction stung, and it made me doubt myself. Was I being unfair? Was I letting past experiences with Evelyn cloud my judgment? I decided to try and push my suspicions aside to trust my husband. Oh, how foolish I was. The breaking point came about 6 months after Evelyn moved in. I had to travel for work for 3 days, a conference in another city. I wasn't thrilled about leaving John and Evelyn alone in the house, given my lingering unease, but it was a mandatory trip. Before I left, I hugged John goodbye and told him I loved him. He hugged me back, maybe a little too quickly, and said he loved me too. Evelyn gave me a brief, slightly awkward hug and wished me a good trip. While I was away, I tried to stay busy with the conference, but my mind kept wandering back home. I called John each night, but our conversations felt strained. He seemed distracted, giving short answers. He said everything was fine, just quiet without me there. On the second night, I called a bit later than usual, around 10 p.m. his time. He didn't answer. I tried again half an hour later, still no answer. I sent texts, they went unread. Panic started to set in. Where was he? Was he okay? I called Evelyn's phone. It went straight to voicemail. Now I was seriously worried. I must have called John's phone a dozen times over the next hour. Finally, just after midnight, he picked up. He sounded flustered, out of breath. He claimed he'd fallen asleep on the sofa watching a movie and hadn't heard his phone. He said Evelyn had gone out with friends from her waitressing job. His explanation sounded plausible, but my gut screamed that something was wrong. Why would Evelyn go out when I knew she barely had any money? And falling asleep so deeply, he missed 12 calls. I cut my trip short. I told my boss there was a family emergency, which, in hindsight, was tragically accurate, and caught the first flight back the next morning. I didn't tell John or Evelyn I was coming home early. I took a taxi from the airport, my heart pounding the entire way. As the taxi pulled onto our street, I saw John's car in the driveway, but not Evelyn's beat-up old car. Maybe she really was out. I let myself into the house quietly. It was eerily silent. I called out John's name, no response. I walked through the living room, the kitchen, nothing seemed out of place. Then I headed upstairs towards our bedroom. As I reached the top of the stairs, I heard it. Muffled sounds coming from the guest room, Evelyn's room. Laughter, quiet voices. My blood ran cold. I crept towards the door, which was slightly ajar. I pushed it open gently, and there they were, John and Evelyn in her bed together. They weren't doing anything explicit at that exact moment, thankfully, but they were cuddled up, John's arm around her, Evelyn's head on his chest, both looking far too comfortable, far too intimate. There was a half-empty bottle of wine on the nightstand and clothes strewn carelessly on the floor. They looked up, startled, as the door opened wider. The look on John's face wasn't guilt, not immediately. It was shock, annoyance even, like I'd interrupted something important. Evelyn just stared, her eyes wide with panic, pulling the duvet up higher. The world tilted. I couldn't breathe. It felt like a physical blow, knocking the air right out of my lungs. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it felt unreal. My husband, my sister, in our home, In the bed I provided for her when she had nowhere else to go. I don't remember exactly what I said first. I think I just screamed. A raw, guttural sound of pain and rage. I screamed at John, asking him how he could do this. I screamed at Evelyn, calling her every name I could think of, asking her how she could betray me like this after everything I'd done for her. John scrambled out of the bed, trying to pull on his pants, stammering excuses. He said it wasn't what it looked like. He said they were just talking, they'd had too much wine. He actually tried to gaslight me, standing there half naked after I caught him in bed with my sister. Evelyn just started crying hysterically, hiding under the covers, repeating I'm so sorry over and over again. Her tears felt fake, manipulative. I wasn't having any of it. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, hard fury I'd never felt before. I pointed to the door. I told John to get his things and get out. Now. He started arguing, saying we needed to talk, that it was a mistake. I cut him off. I screamed, there is nothing to talk about. Get your shit and get out of my house. My voice didn't even sound like my own. Then I turned to Evelyn. Get dressed, I said, my voice dangerously calm now. Pack your bags, you have 1 hour to be out of this house. She just sobbed harder. I repeated it louder this time. 1 hour, Evelyn, or I call the police and have you removed for trespassing. That seemed to get through to her. She slowly started gathering her things, still crying. John, seeing I was serious, started grabbing clothes from our bedroom closet, stuffing them haphazardly into a suitcase. He kept trying to talk to me, pleading, saying he loved me, that Evelyn meant nothing, that it was a huge mistake fueled by alcohol and proximity. His words meant less than nothing. The man I loved, the man I had built a life with, was a liar and a cheat, and he had chosen to betray me with my own sister. The disrespect was staggering. Within the hour, they were both gone. John left first, driving off without looking back. Evelyn lingered, trying one last time to apologize, tears streaming down her face. She said she never meant for this to happen, that she got confused, that she was lonely. I looked her straight in the eye, feeling nothing but contempt. I told her, you are dead to me, Evelyn. Don't ever contact me again. I slammed the door in her face and locked it, leaning against it, finally letting the sobs rack my body. The aftermath was hell. Pure, unadulterated hell. I felt numb, broken, furious, and utterly alone. The house felt huge and empty, tainted by their betrayal. Every room held a memory that was now poisoned. I couldn't sleep in my bedroom. I spent the first few nights on the sofa, crying until I couldn't cry anymore. I called my best friend, Sarah, and told her everything. She was horrified and immediately came over, staying with me for the first few days, helping me navigate the initial shock and grief. Her support was invaluable. I also called my parents. Telling them was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. They were devastated, furious at both John and Evelyn. My mom cried, my dad was quiet with rage. They offered to fly back immediately, but I told them to wait, that I needed some space to process. They respected my wishes but called every day to check in. Their unwavering support, even from afar, meant the world. They assured me they were cutting Evelyn off completely unless she showed genuine, profound remorse and made serious amends, which, let's be honest, seemed highly unlikely given her track record. The next step was practicalities. I contacted a lawyer, one highly recommended for divorce cases involving infidelity. Her name was Ems Harrison, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who immediately put me at ease. I told her the whole sordid story. She was sympathetic but focused. We immediately filed for divorce, citing adultery. We also changed the locks on the house the very next day. I started separating our finances, closing joint accounts, and securing my own assets. Discovering the extent of John's financial deception during this process was another blow. It turned out he had been secretly funneling money from our joint savings account for months, likely spending it on Evelyn dinners, gifts, probably helping her with her supposed debts. This evidence of financial infidelity strengthened my case significantly in the divorce proceedings. John tried contacting me multiple times, calls, texts, emails, filled with apologies, excuses, and pleas for reconciliation. He claimed Evelyn had manipulated him, preyed on his kindness when he was feeling stressed about work. It was pathetic. I blocked his number, blocked him on social media, and directed all communication through Ems Harrison. Evelyn also tried reaching out through burner numbers and mutual acquaintances, sending tearful messages about how sorry she was and how she missed me. I ignored them all. There was nothing either of them could say that would make a difference. The trust was obliterated, shattered beyond repair. The divorce process was emotionally draining but legally straightforward, thanks to M's Harrison and the clear evidence of adultery and financial misconduct. John, likely advised by his own lawyer that he had no leg to stand on, didn't contest much. He just wanted it over with. The house was our main asset. I didn't want to live there anymore, filled with bad memories. We agreed to sell it and split the equity. However, because of the financial infidelity, M's Harrison argued successfully that I was entitled to a larger share of the proceeds from the sale and a larger portion of our other marital assets. John ended up walking away with significantly less than he'd expected. That felt like a small measure of justice. Selling the house was cathartic. As I packed up my belongings, sorting through years of shared memories, it was painful, but it also felt like closing a chapter. I found a new apartment, smaller but bright and entirely mine, in a different part of the city. Decorating it, making it my own space, free from the ghosts of my past life, was incredibly healing. Now Reddit, I guess I'm posting this partly to vent, partly because writing it all down feels strangely therapeutic. I've lurked on our relationship advice and our cheating stories before, feeling sympathy for others, never imagining I'd have such a devastating story of my own. The betrayal by my husband was crushing, but the betrayal by my sister cut even deeper. She didn't just cheat with my husband. She did it in my home, after I showed her compassion and opened my life to her when she was desperate. It's a level of selfishness and cruelty I still struggle to comprehend. Am I the asshole for cutting them both off completely and ensuring John paid financially for his actions during the divorce? Part of me feels guilty for the satisfaction I felt when the settlement favored me, but another part feels it was deserved. Thoughts Update 1. Wow, Reddit. I'm honestly blown away by the response to my original post. I spent hours reading through all the comments, the messages of support, the shared stories, and the advice. Thank you all so much. It made me feel significantly less alone during a really dark time. Knowing that so many strangers cared enough to offer kind words and validation meant more than you can imagine. My post got way more attention than I ever expected. A few friends did message me asking if it was my story. I admitted it was to close ones but kept the details vague otherwise. It's been about 6 months since I posted, and almost a year since D-Day, Discovery Day, as I now call it. A lot has happened, and I wanted to share an update as promised. First, the divorce is final. M's Harrison was an absolute rock star. We presented the evidence of John's affair with Evelyn, corroborated by financial records showing him spending marital funds on her. As I mentioned, he didn't fight it much. The final settlement was definitely in my favor. I got about 70% of the proceeds from the house sale and a larger portion of our investments. It wasn't about the money itself, but it felt like acknowledgement of the damage he caused and the financial resources he misused. He ended up having to move into a small, rather depressing rental apartment across town. As for John and Evelyn, well, karma seems to be doing its thing. From what I've heard through the grapevine, mostly my parents who still get occasional, unwelcome updates from extended family, their relationship didn't last long after they were thrown out of my house. Shocking, I know. Apparently, reality hit hard once the thrill of the illicit affair wore off, and they had to face the consequences of their actions. Without my financial support structure and home, and with John having significantly less money after the divorce, things reportedly got ugly fast. They argued constantly, blaming each other for the mess they were in. Last I heard, Evelyn was couch surfing again, having burned bridges with most of the family. My parents have held firm on cutting contact unless she takes serious steps towards accountability and getting professional help, which hasn't happened. John, I believe, is still in his sad little apartment trying to rebuild his finances and reputation. Some mutual friends told me he seems miserable and isolated. Honestly, good. They made their bed, literally. The integrated revenge aspect some of you asked about wasn't some big dramatic movie plot, but it was satisfying nonetheless. Exposing the truth to our families and closest friends was crucial. It wasn't about shaming them publicly, but about setting the record straight and ensuring I had the support network I needed. Their actions naturally led to their social isolation within our old circle. John also faced some professional awkwardness, as rumors inevitably spread in tight-knit industries like finance, especially regarding the misuse of funds, even if it wasn't company money directly involved this time. It didn't get him fired, but I heard his reputation took a hit. Evelyn losing the family safety net was a direct consequence of betraying the person who provided it. These weren't actions I took for revenge, but rather natural consequences I didn't shield them from. My revenge was moving on, getting my fair share legally, and building a better life without them. And that's the best part of this update. I am doing so much better. Leaving that house, finalizing the divorce, and cutting contact were the best decisions I ever made for myself. I love my new apartment. It feels like my asterisk sanctuary. I've been focusing on my career, and I actually got a promotion a couple of months ago. I've reconnected with old friends, made new ones, and rediscovered hobbies I'd let slide during my marriage. I started hiking again, something I used to love, and joined a book club. Most importantly, I've been going to therapy regularly. It's been incredibly helpful in processing the grief, anger, and betrayal. It's taught me so much about boundaries, self-worth, and recognizing red flags, things I clearly needed to learn. I'm not ready to date yet, and that's okay. Right now, I'm focused on healing and rebuilding my relationship with myself. For the first time in a long time, I feel optimistic about the future. Looking back, the experience was horrific, the worst thing I've ever gone through. But it forced me to find a strength I didn't know I had. It taught me that I can survive betrayal, that I am resilient, and that I deserve respect and honesty in my relationships. It also taught me the painful lesson that sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most, and that blood isn't always thicker than water, especially when water respects your boundaries and doesn't sleep with your husband. My advice to anyone going through something similar is this: trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let anyone gaslight you or make you doubt your own perceptions. Set firm boundaries and don't be afraid to enforce them, even with family. And most importantly, prioritize your own well-being and healing. You are not responsible for fixing other people's messes, especially when they repay your kindness with betrayal. Cut toxic people out of your life, no matter who they are. You deserve better. Thank you again, Reddit, for listening and for your support. It truly made a difference. I'm closing this chapter and looking forward to writing the next one, entirely on my own terms. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.